In spring of 2021, my sister's husband accepted a job in Washington State. At the time, they were living in Atlanta, Georgia. The three of us packed up all of their worldly belongings in 2 vehicles and set off on a journey across the country. The main goal was to get them moved safely, but along the way, I decided to treat it as much like a vacation as I could. So I planned our route to go through Garden of the Gods, Colorado, and Moab, Utah to see Zion National Park. We made the trip in something like 10 days. We only had 1 or 2 days that we weren't driving. The trip was a blur. We did get them safely moved, but the main thing that I remember from that trip is going over the Rocky Mountains. I had never seen the Rockies. I'd never been that far west, and I grew up under the Appalachians. Everything about the Appalachians feels old. All of the deep emotions about how old the Appalachians are that you see represented in media, all of those don't do the Appalachians justice. If you stand on your front porch and look out over the Smoky Mountains, it is breathtaking. And that's where I grew up. I didn't think that any other mountain range was going to take my breath away because I grew up on the side of a mountain outside of the Smokies. I feel like the mountains have always been in my blood. It's always been a part of who I am. And I didn't expect for any other mountain range to do anything to me on an emotional level. But when I saw the Rockies, it took everything I had not to cry. I was floored by the peaks, by the jagged edges, by the roughness and the newness of these mountains. And being that I was just riding in a car with my brother-in-law, I kept it all in. But immediately I started texting my husband, "You need to see this, and I want to see this again with you." And at that time, he was working, I was not. So flying on vacations wasn't really an option. We didn't want to leave the dogs behind. And we also didn't have the budget to just do whatever we wanted. But at that moment, in 2021, I decided that I needed to travel with my husband to see these things together. So driving over the Rockies in 2021, I decided that I was going to try to talk him into van life. I didn't want to do full-time van life. I didn't want to sell everything that we owned for a van. But I decided that I was going to try to lay the foundation to talk him into considering part-time van life, knowing that it would be years before I could convince him it was a good idea and we would have the budget to build out a van and do things. So I started sending him a few YouTube videos about van life, and this was 21, this was when COVID was still really affecting day-to-day operations in every sort of way, and van life was booming. There was so much content being put out, making it look like such a great travel option to have independence and stay isolated and safe and still see the world. And so this content was just making it look so appealing and like such a great idea. And so I started doing what I thought was laying the framework to possibly someday convince him that this was a good idea. I got home in about 2 weeks, and this man's entire YouTube history was van life, how to build out a van, what kind of van do I need, Ford versus Mercedes. He was immediately on board. But the thing was, he was still a new software engineer, and I was unemployed, back to school to be a software engineer. So we knew that nothing could happen immediately. A year later, in the summer of 2022, my sister was giving birth to our first little baby boy, and I knew that I wanted to be there for her. I didn't want to travel alone and leave Derek and the dogs behind, but we also did not have the finances to buy a van at that time. I'd graduated from school and was working as an entry-level software engineer, but it still wasn't enough to just go out and buy a van. So in 2022, we bought a hitch rack for our RAV4, and we loaded up all 3 dogs in our small SUV, and we drove across the country. We stayed in dog-friendly Airbnbs along the way. Some of them were amazing, and some of them were terrible. For instance, in South Dakota, we stayed at a lovely little Airbnb near the Badlands, but the problem was, it was 112 degrees in the desert. The window unit in the Airbnb just could not keep up with trying to cool the air. So it froze completely. There was no air conditioning in this B&B. And we were in the middle of the desert. It's not like we could just take 3 dogs and go down the road to a hotel. There were no other options. And luckily, the Airbnb host came through. She brought an additional window unit and a portable unit. She completely saved the day because she could have just refunded our money and we'd have been SOL. But we realized that staying in Airbnbs wasn't really more expensive than it would have been to stay in hotels. And it let us take the dogs along with us, which was great, but it was also so risky because you just never know what you're gonna get with an Airbnb. We were able to be with my sister for a few weeks after she gave birth, which I think was really good for all of us to just be able to relax and visit. We saw Badlands, Arches National Park, we went out to the Canyonlands, we also saw the Great Sand Dunes and some beautiful scenery along the Rockies and Colorado. But when we got home, we realized that we never wanted to use Airbnbs like that again. It was so stressful to make sure that everything was carried in from the car, back out to the car every day. We had checkout times, we had cleaning tests and chores. Everything was so unpredictable. We realized that we actually got really lucky. Nothing bad happened on that trip. So we got home from that trip in late summer of 2022. We began seriously looking into what it would take to buy a van and get it ready to travel. So we started seriously crunching numbers, and we realized that even if we tightened our belts as much as we could, with both of us working as software engineers, if we were going to purchase a fairly new van and build it out, we would need to save money for several years. And at that point we realized Derek's brother and his child are in Texas, my sister and her child are in Washington State, and if we're going to be a part of our siblings' families, we needed to be ready to drive. So in early 2023, Derek started looking at alternate options to vans, which were Class C RV. And he realized that if we bought a not quite brand new Class C RV, we could spend the same amount of money as a new van, except it would be ready to go just like that. We wouldn't need to worry about building it out and having the crucial systems in place. We could literally finance the whole thing in one bundle, hop in the truck, and go. I was not completely sold on this. I was nervous to finance such a big purchase. We'd financed vehicles before, and of course we have a home mortgage. So I grew up under Dave Ramsey, where if you don't have cash to pay for it, you can't afford it. And there are some merits to that way of thinking, but there are also merits to financing your life to be able to live now. So I wasn't completely on board with the idea of an RV, but I trust Derek. I knew that Derek understood what I actually wanted to do and what my goals were. So even though I wasn't totally on board, I told him, if you can decide what we need, if you can identify what kind of recreational vehicle will be right for us, and you can find something that's within our budget that we're going to be able to finance, I'm on board. And I didn't expect anything to come of it for months, if not years. And about a week later, in spring of 2023, Derek sends me a link to a used RV for sale in North Carolina. Immediately, my jaw dropped. It was only a year old, it had less than 4,000 miles on it, a travel ball family downsized to it and then realized it was too small, and they were basically selling it for exactly what they owed on it, which, again, our RV was only a year old and they had financed it new from the dealer. And so Derek sends me this link of a phenomenal deal, an almost brand new RV. The size seemed right. It's a Thor Freedom Elite, which means that it's not a fancy RV. It's not luxury by any means, but we don't need luxury. We need to be able to pay our bills. So from every perspective, this RV looked suitable for us. So we started the process of getting our financing lined up just in case we decided to take this RV home. And I called my dad, who called his mechanic buddy, and I said, hey, if I buy you barbecue dinner down in North Carolina, would you like to go for a scenic drive and maybe look at this RV with us? So my dad and his buddy hop in the truck, and me and Derek hop in the RAV, and off we go to North Carolina. And again, I really didn't expect any of this to happen so fast. Shout out to Steve, who had taken amazing care of this RV for a year. It was so well maintained. He had already taken it back to Camping World to deal with all of the new RV issues. He gave us the best tour you could imagine, showed us how everything works. He understood that we were new to RVs and we didn't really know what we were looking for. And he gave us so much valuable information and knowledge, and we left with the RV. Derek drove it home from North Carolina. I was terrified. I'd never driven anything bigger than a Kia Soul. I can barely park a motorcycle. And so all of a sudden, we have an RV. So in 2023, we took our RV from East Tennessee to Texas and back, all the way to Washington State for Thanksgiving. And at the time I started this channel, we'd had the RV for less than a year, but we'd put almost 15,000 miles on it, and we'd been in it for roughly 3.5 months of the year. So our RV is the 22HE, which is 24-foot bumper to bumper, but it has 22 feet inside wall to inside wall. And now that we have our RV, I can't imagine living in a van. Like I said, we have 3 dogs. We have 2 huskies, a miniature poodle, And Derek and I are not small people. The size of our RV is perfect for us. The amenities that our RV has, the fact that it has a black tank, the fact that we have a full shower, the fact that we have propane, the fact that we have a table that folds out into a bed that the dogs can sleep on, our RV is perfect for us. It's amazing to look back at me in 2021 thinking, man, I would love to see the world with my husband. And then in 2023, parking our RV at the edge of the Grand Canyon together. It really is amazing to see what's happened. So part of that is why I started this channel, because not only do I want to share what we're doing, but I also want to document it, and I want to remember how it felt to see these places together, how it felt to make that RV our own, to customize it, to make it better, to make it more comfortable to ride in, to make it safer, and it makes me really excited to continue seeing the world. So that's how we got where we are now. The goal was to be a part of our family's lives, to be able to just hop in the vehicle, have everything that we need, and be in Washington State or in Texas to spend time with the ones we love, and to also see the states together with our dogs as a family. So we'll lay fairly low over the summer. As it gets hotter, it's just not fun to travel for us, and it becomes borderline unsafe to travel with the Huskies. In late August, I'm hoping to get up to Kenosha, Wisconsin for the Bristol Renaissance Fair, and then soon after that, as fall starts to peak, we're going to be driving back up to Washington State. I'm hoping to go up north and follow the border along and see a lot of the northern states. I also have been dying to get to Glacier National Park, so I'm really excited to go through that in the fall. And then hopefully we're going to be able to come back down through Texas and hit Texas Renaissance Festival in late November. It's so exciting for me to know that we have the RV, we'll be able to plan this, we can see what we want to see, and just to have something to look forward to like that. So between now and then, I'm hoping to put out a couple more videos about the RV, about how we live in it, what works for us, maybe some informational videos to help folks that are on the fence about purchasing an RV decide if that's going to be right for them. And then as the weather starts to cool off a little bit, we'll pick back up with the actual travel vlogs, and I'll hopefully be able to share a lot of really interesting adventures with you. But for now, I have a plane to catch and a completely different adventure to go on. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. Everyone's journey is going to be different, and for some folks, an RV isn't going to be the answer. But for us, it's given us the opportunity to have so many more adventures together, and it was absolutely the right decision. Whatever the right decision is for you, I hope that you make decisions based on chasing adventure and enjoying your life. And I'll catch you on the next adventure.